The FBI has cracked one of the largest international heroin trafficking rings, a ring with ties to the Bay Area. Agents in New York have seized more than 800 pounds of heroin hidden in small tires and $3 million in cash, too. At least 19 people were arrested in 4 different cities, including San Francisco. The FBI says that ring was run by suspects from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. One Bay Area man was arrested for his alleged role in that operation. Xu Ching-hum pleaded not guilty in federal court in San Francisco today.
100 FBI agents and New York City police. It was the biggest heroin bust in American history. 800 pounds of heroin, street value $1 billion, seized last night. Much of it smuggled in tires. About $3 million in cash also was seized. FBI officials said the raid put out of business a Southeast Asian drug ring that has been operating in the States for 2 years now. 17 arrests have already been made. 14 more are expected shortly.
New York police and the FBI netted a record 838 pounds of heroin today. The dope's worth $1 billion, and it's probably the biggest bust in U.S. history. Authorities say they seized enough Asian heroin to supply half of New York City's 200,000 addicts for a year. The drugs were hidden inside lawnmower tires. More than $3 million in cash was also found. 45 suspects in 7 cities, including one San Francisco man, were arrested. The FBI says this sophisticated ring was a major...
Agents know the cocaine was shipped to Philadelphia, then trucked to New York, all part of a massive smuggling operation tied to Colombia's Cali cartel. The drugs, they say, bore the same markings as 21 tons of cocaine seized in Los Angeles in September, a bust called the largest in the world. While Colombia's drug war did slow cocaine shipments into the United States in its first few weeks this summer, federal agents here in New York say they've seen no impact whatsoever.
We seized 37 tons in October, and this may be another 5 tons. I am saying right now in New York, we have not seen any shortage of cocaine and have not seen any change in price.
Emergency services officers are working overtime tonight to clear both the drugs and the lie out of the warehouse. Tomorrow morning, 23,000 athletes are scheduled to run right past it during the New York City Marathon. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, New York.
Another Colombian under indictment for cocaine smuggling was extradited to this country today. Guillermo Juan Bueno Delgado is the 6th Colombian brought to the United States to face charges since August, when Colombia launched a new war on drugs.
Reports on what was done to outdeal the dealers.
It was an international sting operation by U.S. drug agents.
We were posing as transporters of cocaine into the United States.
A 9-month undercover investigation that took agents to Colombia, Venezuela, Miami, and New York. The result? The seizure of nearly 1,500 pounds of Colombian cocaine worth more than $100 million on the streets of New York.
We went to the Medellin cartel and advised them that we could bring loads of cocaine into the U.S., specifically into New York, for a fee.
The Medellin cartel, Colombia's biggest drug exporter, was headed by this man, Carlos Lader. Earlier this month, he was sentenced to life plus 135 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. Today, officials said his successor is Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, the man they dealt with in the latest sting.
We consider him to be the single most active man today in the Medellin cartel.
The U.S. attorney will present evidence to a grand jury and try to get Gacha indicted.
One of the problems in indicting him, as we've learned in the past, is getting him back from Colombia. Right now, we don't have a treaty with Colombia.
But 3 Colombian nationals have been arrested in New York in this case, and 3 weeks ago, drug agents here intercepted 6,000 pounds of cocaine shipped by the Medellin cartel. That makes a total of 10,000 pounds of cocaine seized in the New York area alone in the last 6 months. Despite all of this, the price of cocaine on the streets has not changed. For law enforcement officials, it means a lot of drugs are still getting in. Harold Dowell, CBS News, New York.
A Washington, D.C.
Senator Alphonse D'Amato has refused to drop his call for a federal death penalty in some drug cases. D'Amato's amendment has blocked Senate approval of the $300 billion defense bill. Senate leaders have assured D'Amato he can bring the measure up later if he'll remove it from the defense bill. But D'Amato says he's not budging. He says he fears the measure would die in the House if not attached to the defense bill. D'Amato's proposal would permit federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in drug-related murders.
U.S. Customs officials say they busted a drug ring trying to smuggle $80 million worth of cocaine into New York. The officials say the shipment was headed toward a Long Island resort area. Federal agents arrested 9 suspects after a jet loaded with cocaine traveling from Colombia to New York made an emergency landing in Miami. Officials say the group had planned to make a run every 2 days for a month. CNN's John Sabrella reports now on a new study that says using the military to stop the flow of cocaine into the U.S. won't work.
Any comment?
In the early 1980s, when the so-called war on drugs began, federal drug agents estimated they were seizing only 10% of all the cocaine coming into the United States. 5 years and billions of dollars later, the estimate is still 10%.
You see very large seizures taking place in the 3 and 4 ton category, and virtually no effect on the market. The price of cocaine does not go up. Cocaine, to me, is like wheat. It's a crop, it's a product.
The reason drug interdiction has not become more successful, according to a report by the Rand Corporation think tank, is that drug smugglers adapt. For that reason, the study says that using the military to seal the borders would not work.
So in the beginning, you see a apparently big impact of the new interdiction method, whatever it is. But over time, that effect tends to go away as the smugglers figure out the ways around it.
Drug agents say the military would help the problem, but it wouldn't solve it.
Any approach is welcomed because, after all, we have 2 choices. We can, as I say, do something or do nothing.
80% of all the cocaine entering the United States comes through South Florida. Agents here know too well how smugglers adapt. In 1987, they seized 68,000 pounds of cocaine. In one instance, 3,000 pounds of cocaine were found welded into the steel walls of cargo containers. At the Fort Lauderdale seaport, 8,000 pounds were stashed in wood planks. In other instances, thousands of pounds of cocaine were hidden in freezers shipped into Miami International Airport and in machine pulleys off a commercial plane from South America. The military could do little to stop these major shipments. Privately, some drug agents and Justice Department officials say the United States shouldn't throw another nickel toward interdiction. The hundreds of millions of dollars, they say, could be better spent on drug education programs. John Zarella, CNN, Miami.
Bite out of the drug trade in America's heartland with one of the biggest busts on record in the Midwest. Chicago police raided a garage on the city's southwest side, finding about $5 million worth of coke and heroin. The 247 pounds of heroin was the most ever confiscated in a Chicago drug raid. A Canoga Park, California man is under arrest, accused of being a drug wholesaler.
A police officer in Oakland turned a neighbor's tip into a $22,000 rock cocaine bust. It all started when the angry neighbor called police to complain about drug dealers in front of a local grocery store. When Officer John Hasselmeyer arrived at the store yesterday, he found a key to a motel room on one of the suspected dealers. No one inside the room, just 1,100 bags of rock cocaine.
All their cutting and packaging material was still there, the razor blades, all the individually wrapped Ziploc bags, and larger bags with notations in them of how many were in each bag, and then little slips of paper all over the room indicating some form of accounting.
We're hearing stories like that more and more often these days, citizens teaming up with police to crack down on crack dealers.